That would upset everybody. And I think falafel might kill it, or I might step on it because chihuahuas are not super smart.
No, that's why I said that you turn into emotional support animal. Makes me wonder if you had a chihuahua.
No, falafel is a rescue dog.
Mixed breed.
Yeah, his mom was an English toy terrier though.
Okay, so
Those
it's a
dogs
small
are
one.
not known for how chill they are.
Do you know any other, like, what's the other half of it, or is this a complete mix of things?
Well, his dad was a slut, I guess.
Interesting mix.
But not a breed specifically. I hope that was the first thing that ended up on YouTube. Just
Yeah, exactly.
that
would be the best.
Okay, so just so you know, we are now live.
Okay.
Okay.
So anything you say from now on will end up on YouTube.
Okay.
Um, okay, excellent. Let's just wait one more minute before we get started. 4:29. Supposed to be starting at 4:30, so let's see. Any more people join either in person or online?
It's a long minute.
It's a long minute, very long minute. Well, I think it is now 4:30, so we can slowly get started. I will start by welcoming all of you. Hi, glad you could make it. Glad all of you who are online were able to join. My name is Charlotte Kaurani. I am the former president of Nordic Inclusify and one of the founding members. My co-host tonight is Elodie Magnier, sitting over there. And we will briefly introduce our panelists to all of you soon, but first, in case you haven't heard of Nordic Inclusify before, so we were founded in 2021. We are a volunteer organization that wants to bring more attention to different topics around diversity, equity, and inclusion within recruitment, talent strategy, as well as employer branding. And we have been hosting different kinds of events around these topics, usually a few events per year, and then more informal afterwards, in addition to these. This is only our second in-person event or a hybrid event. In the past, we primarily focused on webinars, partly because when we started, it was during the pandemic, and so we wanted to bring people together from all around the Nordics. And one of the reasons that we are called Nordic Inclusify is because we do have members outside of Finland as well, including some of the founding members. And we aim to have speakers from different countries, not just from Finland, at our events. Obviously, when we're hosting something in person, that requires the people to actually be able to be present in Helsinki. But we're happy that people can also join online and watch from wherever you are at the event. You can follow us on either Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. So LinkedIn is our main channel. We also have a Slack channel for more informal discussion around these topics, which you're more than welcome to join if you haven't joined already. In person here, so what we're doing, we'll give you brief introductions and then we'll get started with the panel discussion. At the end of the panel discussion, there will be a Q&A session. Those of you here, you can just raise your hand and say that speak once you're given the turn to speak. If you're online, you can either ask to unmute yourself and then ask your question yourself, or you can send it to the chat. If you want to ask it anonymously, you can send it to Monica Audra, who is our moderator on Zoom chat tonight. But now I'll hand it over to Elodie, who would like to introduce yourself and the panel for the topic.
I'll introduce myself first. My name is Elodie Magnier. I have joined Nordic Inclusify for this September, and I'm very happy to be here tonight and to host this event, as its topic is very dear to me, as I was once, not so long ago, actually, like just a month ago, I was struggling myself to find a job. So this is a very dear topic for me, and I'm very happy to have with us tonight these four amazing people. Thank you so much for accepting to be here with us tonight. Would you like to introduce yourself, what you do, and one fact that you would like to share with our audience? Let's start with Em.
Hello, everyone. My name is Em Seikanen, and I am a sorry, put that there. I'm a marketing consultant. I've been here in Finland 4.5 years now. And I've been on the board of Neurodivergent Inclusify for, this is my second term. And one fact about me, I really like to be active, not very good at sitting still. And so, yeah, I was on the gymnastics team in high school. Your turn.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Ruchi Sahita. I am originally from India, but I am living in Finland now past 11 years with my family. And in my family, I have two beautiful daughters and my husband, and we are small, happy family. Finland is a lovely place. There is, work-life balance, good, beautiful nature. And on professionally, I am an entrepreneur. 1.5 years ago, I founded this company called Recruit Redefined. We are on a mission to normalize disabilities at workplaces. And yeah, one fact about me, Recruit Redefined is my passion, and it was born out of, discrimination at job market, and it is born out of my personal struggle of getting into employment. So yeah, it's great to be here and share my experience with you all.
Well, thanks, Elodie, for inviting me, and very happy to be here as well. I am Halla Hanninen. I am a lot of things, so I'm just going to go with the DI consultant. I don't, have the time to list everything that I do. But one fact about myself is I'm just going to share that I'm diagnosed with ADHD. And at the time when I got diagnosed 6 years ago, I was the first person that I knew that was speaking openly about the diagnosis on social media. That's something. I didn't know anybody else, so I was there, and it was very scary, and I jumped in and I shared that with the world. So that's the fact.
I'm Peter Den Heten. I'm an innovation and transformation consultant, been working in digital product design and management for 25 years. I'm autistic. I use that language to refer to that for myself. Only recently I have decided to do something about it. And I'm now working on a product that hopefully will help people to manage their manage their disability in the workplace better, in an easier way. I also I've worked for very large companies as a designer, but I have never really worked, how do you say that, focused on my own, for my own disability. So I've never really used it, and I really want to change that.
Thank you, Peter, Alan, Lucy, and for being here. Just as a side note, if anyone online is having trouble hearing, you can send a message to chat. And for our panelists, we try to speak up because we only have the one speaker over here. It's a little low tech, so we need to, even though everyone in this space might be able to hear, even if we speak a little bit quieter, then the ones online might have trouble hearing if you don't speak loudly enough. But then, should we go into our actual panel discussion?
Yes, we can start the panel discussion by delving into the recruitment process in general. These past few years, the recruitment process has drastically changed from what was usually done before. It has lots of steps, it has lots of things that you have to do. And sometimes at the end, you've done all of this or not. My first question for the panel is quite an obvious one. what challenges did you encounter while in a recruitment process?
I think the recruitment processes are challenging because of unconscious biases that exist. There is a culture of culture fit, like one size fits all. There is like people or job seekers can have different needs or different abilities to cope up with the recruitment process. So that is majorly missing. This thinking is majorly missing when we talk about recruitment processes here. So a lot of unconscious biases exist. This is one major uh, factor that I have come across in the recruitment processes.
What about those of you who are looking for work, for example?
I forgot to mention this, but I also have ADHD, and there are some things.
Speak up a little.
Speak up more.
Yeah.
Okay. There are some things about the job search and recruitment process that are really kind of difficult to manage with ADHD. For example, if you have a deadline on the application, and I think lots of people might have a sweet spot deadline. For me, it's about 4 days. If the deadline to turn it in is like 2.5 weeks away, or if it is the next day, I might either try to put it off and then forget about it, even though I keep track in a very careful spreadsheet. If I don't set a reminder, I might forget to finish the application, or I might have to rush through it and make a mistake. The other thing, a lot of times the hiring manager or the talent attraction lead, more, okay. Often the talent attraction professional or the recruiter may have a set time to take calls. If that time is like 1 hour on a Tuesday afternoon and then the following Monday morning, it can be really hard to kind of pencil in that time just to make a phone call and really clear it, because if everybody is calling at that same time and I missed the call the first time, and I might put the phone down and be like, okay, I'm going to do something for 10 minutes. It's really hard to know when that 10 minutes is up. I have been consulting a long time, so I have a pretty good grasp on how long it will take me to do like specific tasks needed in my field, or like how much time I need to block out for various things. But sometimes if it's something that doesn't need to be done this week or on this timeline, it gets pushed back, and that is really hard in a job interview process. In the actual interview itself, remembering to be like very concise and clear and stick to just results. That for me was also a cultural difference here in Finland. What makes an interview go well is very, very different than in the US, which is where I grew up. So just kind of having to stay concise. The other thing, especially with the way work is a little bit more flexible here, video chats are so hard to focus on sometimes. If you've stared at a screen for too long and your eyes are a bit tired, or you're just starting to like lag a bit, everybody has these problems, but I think it's maybe when you have ADHD, it's a little bit harder to, I guess, fake or push your way through it. And then, yeah, speaking of being too long-winded, somebody else, please share your experience.
Yes. So when I said about unconscious bias, when I mentioned about unconscious biases, so this is one thing that soft skills, are expected out of each and every job seeker, irrespective of consideration of their diversity condition. I would say neurodiversity condition particularly, because, for example, as M mentioned, all the job seekers are expected to have a clear communication. And if it's a video call, we are expected to have a good eye contact and looking at the camera all the time. So it could be a challenging for a candidate with neurodiversity. So these kind of, expectation and biases exists. Yeah.
Peter, go
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm not right now not actively looking for work, but I have been in the past, and also when I lived in Australia for 12 years and primarily freelanced there, worked as a contractor. Moving back to Europe, I started sort of looking around what was out there and what were my options. And what you just mentioned is something that really stands out to me, is that when you apply for a contract role or as a freelancer, the focus is primarily on your references and the work that you have delivered, so the quality of the work that you have delivered. Whilst when you apply for a role, it's much more about that, the culture fit, your personality, your soft skills, as you say. And why I really wanted to say something is that I have noticed a couple of trends almost, where companies are claiming, testing companies basically are claiming to be more inclusive and even bring up neurodiversity as one of the unique selling points, while they actually test more on those soft skills and say, what is your CV worth? What are your diplomas worth? What is your experience worth if you do not have those skills? And they test you specifically on those. And I've mentioned that in between us before, but I had a personal experience where a team decided in round 4 to do a role-playing game where they put me on the spot, basically with, fictional situations that doesn't work for me at all. So I have 1,000 questions when someone comes up with a fictional scenario of something where I have to decide if I have to let someone go or not, or something. It's not real, so it doesn't work at all for me. I mentioned that on LinkedIn. It's a very large company in the Netherlands, a big tech company. And one of the C-level executives got in contact with me, and we got on a call, and they mentioned that they were not aware at all that the team was doing these things. So I think it's very important to manage those processes really well and scrutinize them like that, because super easy to say you're inclusive, but what I'm trying to say is that the interesting thing is that even those things are often done with the thought, with the thinking that it is extra inclusive almost, and it completely excludes me personally and with my, I want to call it a condition, whatever, like my autism. Yeah,
it's not hard to tell the candidate what to expect.
Not to begin with. Yeah.
Like everybody should be quite clear about every step of the process, and that's something that is like not always done. But that would really help not only neurodivergent individuals, but any like top candidate for a role.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that a lot of the time when you make any kind of sort of accommodations to the process, it actually benefits everyone, not just the candidates who are neurodivergent or have any other kind of disabilities. Like usually that actually helps.
Yeah.
And I find it really interesting, your points about the fictional scenarios, because for example, as a hiring manager, that's something that we do all the time, is like, what would you do in this kind of a situation? And I, for example, hadn't thought about that being an issue for someone who's on the spectrum of autism. We actually did a previous webinar on neurodiversity And even in that part didn't come up, like we talked about, like different formats for interviews, like doing walking interviews instead of like staring into someone's face all the time, for example. But like that particular thing never came up. So it's really good that you bring that up.
It's really one of the worst things, and yeah, maybe second to unexpected collaboration exercises or things like that, where expectations are not set properly. But it's really simple. It is. I can imagine it, but because I have 1,000 questions, and what I noticed in that particular interview was that within seconds, no, not seconds, exaggerating, within minutes, I annoyed them so much that they didn't like me anymore. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the essence of an interview, is that people need to like you. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges with this, is that what I struggle with the most, that as long as I can focus on my achievements, it's easy. And generally people like me in life, but I tend to get under people's skin in those interviews because of asking so many questions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll bring up like a different point of view. Like, I think I can relate to so many things that you've said and agree with like pretty much everything there. But I think my ADHD has helped me also. So it's not only that it can be challenging in the recruitment process, but it has also helped me. Like, I've always been like, from very young age, I've been the one to perform, and like I'm not really kind of like awkward in interview situations. I get excited about looking for a job, and I go into the interview and I'm so curious about, like, you know, what the job is going to be like, and who the interviewer is, and like I'm just, you know, asking these questions, and I always usually get the job that I want. And if you go and check my LinkedIn, you've seen that I've, you know, done a few things, and that maybe is like 1/4 of what I've done in life. I think so that helps me. I feel like that is the part of my ADHD that really helps me to get a job, because I can, you know, be so inspiring and sparkly and bubbly, and kind of like, somehow, at least I kind of think that it's because of that. The challenge is sometimes when you go through a recruitment process, and let's talk about skill tests, is like, if I have to calculate something and I have a time on my computer or the screen, I will just stare at the time running down, and I can't focus on the actual equation that I would have to be solving. So like, I do have some sort of dyscalculia as well, that I've just realized like in the last 6 months probably, which is funny, because I got diagnosed 6 years ago, I think I said that. So I never realized that I can't really calculate in my head well, or I mix up numbers. So those kind of situations, I feel like I'm so dumb, like, what's wrong with me? I can't do this. So I don't know. It's definitely one of the most challenging parts. Or then in the beginning, if it's like you've created your CV, of course you might be doing some adjustments there to fit like a certain role that you're applying. But then if you go to a website and you have to fill in this form that looks like death. I don't know, you get what I mean, probably. I'm like, oh no, I'm not gonna do that. So it's like I'm out. So those are kind of my points.
Neurodiversity, again, you know, it's here, this one size fits all is not applicable at all, because people can find different things like challenging. For example, for you, you know, being social or being bubbly, it's like your strength.
Yeah.
But for, again, there are job seekers with neurodiversity for whom it is like a nightmare. So, and also in this traditional recruitment processes, there are candidates who are impacted, who are neurodiverse, but they are getting hired. So it's not an impossible task as well. But of course, there is a need for making changes, and it has to be, you know, so that maximum job seekers can adapt to the process. The first, challenge, according to me, it starts at the job advertisement. Interview comes much later after the selection. The job advertisement that are published by the recruiters, they are not very inclusive, and they could be like braining even for a neurotypical individual. So there are some things definitely, there is a need of improvement. For example, I have been reading job descriptions. They are like 1,000, 1,500 words. And ideally, according to studies, a precise job description for a neurodiverse candidate should fall under 500 to 600 words. So it has to be really precise. And this is big time, employers are missing on. So, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, but very precise, but not too precise, because that's another thing that for me personally is sometimes I just don't apply because I don't tick all the boxes,
I'm the
right?
same.
So
Yeah.
if you have 50 bullet points and I don't tick 3 out of the 50, I might not even apply because, oh no, I've never done this. And while many people would just either say that or maybe talk around it or something like that.
For example, there are job descriptions where experience of some technologies or which is not needed.
No,
so
exactly.
that is also
Yeah.
mentioned. So what is actually needed for the role? So it has to be, it should be like little bit precise. It should not be like overwhelming.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Does it help if it's, for example, formulated so that like these are the skills that are mandatory, like actually required for this position, and then except we would like you to have.
Yeah. And I've seen those, and that
Yeah.
helps. And like, then that is making it clearer that we also appreciate these, or you might benefit if you have something of these, but these are the ones that we require. Yeah. But then again, like I have to say, the requirements are usually it's just, they just.
Yeah. The other thing, this might be general with a lot of job ads, but if you're hiring for one role, but it's actually 3 roles, kind of be clear which 1.5 to 2 roles, or hopefully just, 1 role that would be the priority for this role. Because if something is one of these jobs that should really be done by 3 people, but you don't have the resources for 3 people, somebody might apply who matches a lot of, ticks a lot of your boxes, and then it will be very difficult. It's kind of a waste of everyone's time not to really know what you're looking for before you write the job ad. So I think, that is something to take into consideration. But also a lot of job ads have bullet points, and there will be 12 bullet points, and each bullet point will be 2 sentences long. This is no longer a list. It is a weird looking paragraph.
That's very true. Like for me as well, like I'm dyslexic, so like I hate reading long job ads, and sometimes like I'll read an ad and I'll be like, okay, this sounds like me, and I'll apply, and then I only realize afterwards that I don't actually remember what they wrote.
Yeah. The other thing, it's not just people who have known they're neurodivergent for some time right now. I guess in the US, they've done a study on this, so it's probably everywhere because COVID was everywhere. But the cognitive decline of adults in their 20s, 30s, and 40s has increased 3-fold, and 2/3 of those are cognition and attention issues. So people who have had COVID might not even realize, if you've recently noticed dyscalculia.
I was hoping you would know how to actually, because I was like,
I think
that sounds good.
Dyscalculia.
Yes.
Yeah. I think if you've recently noticed that could also be the effect of having had COVID.
I've had it forever, but I just realized it
Yeah,
one
because
scenario, but yeah.
I have never had a problem with like word order, but I noticed, actually, I was texting you about that and I put like the wrong word. Like I split a verb, but I split it in such a weird way. And I was like, what is happening? Like my brain just jumped over to here.
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah, but I've only noticed that in the past like 4 months.
But this is such a typical situation that, like, you know, we ADHDers, we take the conversation now to another dimension. I was like, yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
I'll make one
Yes.
comment. Also, yeah, about that the one size fits all. That's something that I think is super important because even though I embrace the whole the notion of neurodiversity and being neurodivergent, I do think there are such significant differences between the different yeah
Individuals.
individuals and also the types, yes, and then within those types, of course, you have individuals, yeah, so it and also like for autistic people, for example, I do not at all represent that, right? Nobody would, but even if you look statistically, I have generally been employed and I managed really well. I have my struggles, but employment is not necessarily one of them. Only if I apply for a full-time permanent position, but I can keep myself busy and earn money. So that's really a privilege, especially when you realize that between 80 and 90% of people diagnosed with the same thing will never really be gainfully employed. It's super high, and that for autistic people in particular. So yeah, so be sitting here talking about work and 25 years of work, and it's not representative at all.
That's such a
right?
good
So
point.
it's, that's what also the reason why I really do this now and become a little bit more vocal about it, because it's a huge issue to you, really a huge issue to just literally most people who are diagnosed autistic will never really work. So it's a big problem.
And there's a lot of people who are also on the spectrum who aren't diagnosed and who don't necessarily identify as neurodivergent or with ADHD or any of the others. Should we talk a little bit about labeling? Because I think that's something that a lot of us are afraid of. Like for example, like I'm only mildly dyslexic, and so I primarily identify as neurotypical, but like being someone with a communications background, disclosing the fact that I have dyslexia is not exactly that simple, because it might make people think that, you know, you can't read and therefore you can't proofread things and can't communicate and so forth, when like in reality it means that I'm more careful with finding everyone's mistakes, not just my own, but everyone's, because I'm so used to finding my own mistakes. What do you guys feel about like disclosing your divergence in the recruitment process, and at what stage would you bring that up? Would you bring it up?
I would not bring that up in a recruitment process personally. I mean, I think I'm, quite open about the traits. I had an interview this week and I was very clear, when I have to write, that is something where I can really hyper focus on the writing, but I probably won't do that at the office at a busy time, because everybody there would be distracting. In marketing, sometimes it feels like you're always putting out tiny fires, likewise in comms, and being able to respond honestly almost better in a crisis than the rest of the time is very useful in that field. There are some people in the networks here and in general on LinkedIn who are like open about ADHD and call it a superpower. Personally, I do not like to call this a superpower. First of all, because like if it is a superpower to you and you're talking about that, that is a little bit problematic for people who cannot force themselves to function as well as you for whatever reason. That's showing very, very poor solidarity. And if for whatever number of factors I have been exceptional enough to kind of hide this, which I might be better at professionally than personally, probably, then it feels like it's, you know, doing a real disservice to people who just aren't able to. And it really doesn't matter why they can't. The other thing is that, like Lotta was saying, I've known you for what, 2.5 years? I learned that you were dyslexic when we prepped for this on Tuesday. I had no idea. And like, it's because you learn so well to overcompensate in various like different ways, that it becomes like almost second nature to always be overperforming. When I was a graduate student, I did quite well. I had 3 jobs. I was studying full time, but not having that much in my schedule it took a long time to be able to learn to manage unstructured time. And unfortunately, when you are a job seeker, all of your time is unstructured for the most part.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the superpowers. I actually mentioned this to Elodie yesterday when we had a conversation. And I also said I don't like to use the word superpower because it's just, you know, we have qualities and traits and strengths as individuals. And I don't think that I've seen that a lot. And I've been there actually myself as well at some point. I think there is this like kind of curve when you get diagnosed and then you're like, okay, I want to talk about the positive side of things as well, but like they're not superpowers. We just, you know, function differently in different situations and we can do amazing things very quick if the setting is right, and you know, but then there are also challenges.
We talked about the superpowers problem in our prep also. We didn't have a line to all prep together like a lot of times. So
It's no, I agree. I think like I said, I've not, I've been diagnosed a long time ago. I have always hidden it. I'm a master at disguising it. I don't do it now because I don't care, right? Like, but it's definitely not a superpower for me. And I really agree with everything that was said. And I think that's my personal experience. Right now, I don't think it's smart. If you have managed so far, it goes a little bit against what I just said, right? Like I'm doing this very deliberate because I'm quite driven now to I guess to do something, I guess, about it, or for the, I don't want to call it a community even. I just want to do something for people to make their lives better, I guess. But it's from my perspective not smart to disclose it beforehand or during the interview process. And I know that a lot of people disagree. That's also fine. But I think right now we're not there yet, despite what everybody says that it's a smart move. If you manage to find work before and you're not struggling with that part specifically, maybe bring it up later and not while you're still interviewing. But like I said, don't take that as advice. I mean, it's just my personal experience.
I think everybody can consider that. I've done it and I've not done it. So it's like I've tried, but like everybody knows who follows me on LinkedIn probably because I've been so vocal about it. So I just thought at some point, like, why not why try to hide it, because they'll find out. But it's also something that I would do kind of what you've done, that I will just talk about like what kind of environment I can thrive in, and then like what is not necessary. Like I kind of like put it in words of like, because if I mention ADHD, people will be like thinking about, I don't have the hyperactivity, for example, at all. So then they would just think that I'm just constantly running to places or like, you know, doing something. I might be doing that sometimes as well, but I think they don't have enough information of what it is. So I will just, tell them that like I need comfort. Sometimes like, I'm noise sensitive. I might be walking around with my noise cancelling headphones. So, you might need to kind of get my attention some other way. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important if somebody knows that they have, some kind of neurodiversity. It's really important that they talk about it. If you don't talk about it, if you cover it, then you are making it like a taboo. And when you talk about such topics, you create awareness about it. And it not only helps you, but it will also help other people who are, in the same situation. And when you disclose about your neurodiversity, you can also ask about, if you need any workplace accommodation, then you are also educating the employers. I know employers want to change, they want to bring this setup in, but if they don't know what they really need to do to enable employment for neurodiverse people, and if neurodiverse people, they don't talk about it, then we are like nowhere. It's everything is pointless and directionless. So yeah.
But Paula first and.
Yeah.
I just want to say that I a little bit disagree with that. I think it's like you really have to think about if you're comfortable doing so. I don't think it's your responsibility necessarily to go and talk openly about it, especially if you just recently discovered it or you haven't had like a support network to talk about. I think the employers, they are more responsible of finding out, and they're responsible of creating recruitment processes and environment and culture that is like inclusive also to neurodivergent. We're not there yet, but like we have people who feel comfortable talking about it, and it shows more and more, and that's great. But just want to kind of remind that you don't have to either if you're not feeling that you're quite there yet.
Yes, I agree. If somebody is not comfortable, then it's a different situation, because this can also depend from person to person. But if somebody feels that, it's a good thing for me to know beforehand as an employer or as a recruiter, because I see in Finland also now we have a lot of, diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, advocates, and we have there is this momentum where employers want to change, but if they are not aware and if we don't speak up, then we are lost. So it's important somewhere to speak about it.
I think that speaking up is important once you have a much longer relationship with your employer specifically. It, I think, is quite a heavy cognitive load to come out about anything, no matter like what it is. And I do think it is a coming out. So I mean, it's a little bit frustrating. And this is also possibly a cultural thing that kind of spans a lot of areas. Like, for example, there was an article that came out, I think yesterday, about how tourism workers in Lapland are exploited. And instead of holding the employers there accountable either, it's activate people to complain about their employers. And that's, probably a bigger issue. Like, the people who are having like the hardest time at the bottom of the food chain, it shouldn't fall on their backs to do the work in that way. It shouldn't be like the job of like a LGBTQIA plus individual to educate their doctor. Like it feels like it kind of falls along those same lines.
Yeah, I think that's what Peter.
Yeah, I again completely agree with that. I have actually mentioned it in a few interviews quite recently, and without exception, the response is like, I'm not joking. Without exception, the response is, "Oh, that's okay. We are all a little bit autistic." It sounds like a joke because it's what you see a lot. It's without exception. I've had it like 5 times, and then you sit there, and then it happens. And what you're saying is like, okay, then I have to start the conversation about what I need. I know that what I need is inherently difficult for others to adhere to, but I want my information in writing. Well, I've tried that. I even agreed at some point with that was actually a contract, but with the employer, that my partner would take the phone calls and communicate on my behalf, because I knew that they were going to try. That's what's normal is to get me to do more work than I have agreed to, and they will manipulate me into that. I never say no. I literally never say no, and I know that for myself. So, like that was in light of what you're saying about the exploitation as well. It's like, I cannot stand up for myself. I'm a big guy and I am verbally strong and I do great work, and they will always get away with murder with me because I don't speak up. So I can't do that for myself. What you say, I really can't. So, and that's strange to have to say that, because I'm not taken seriously in that because of my being, right? Don't come across as such. But I know at night when I speak with my partner about it, that she's, oh God, there we go again. Like I agree to everything.
Yeah.
And it's a drama. But that's one example. But and another point, one more point in regards to this, don't underestimate the stigmas. With autism, it was recently in Australia, you were put higher on the terrorist suspect list when you are autistic. So you get extra points at the border control if you are autistic. So knowing the absolute horrors for me to go already through security, and I use the lanyard and everything, and they're pretty good with it. But still, knowing that in the back of your head that you score extra points on the terrorism likelihood list, that is pretty daunting. In New Zealand, and I speak about Australia and New Zealand because I'm an Australian citizen as well, but in New Zealand, if you want to migrate to New Zealand and you're autistic, you can forget about it. You know, that's those kind of things. In the UK, sorry, I have one more example. In the UK during COVID, when you were diagnosed autistic, you were automatically put in a category that if you would get COVID and you would get on life support, they would not give you life support.
What?
Yes. So know what you say when you talk about it. You can talk about it quite light, and then again, it depends on what countries you're in. And I know the Finland and also the Netherlands, where I'm from and was born, probably not that bad, but there are a lot of countries around the world where you have to be really careful with what you say.
I am not really, I don't have experience with countries like.
Oh, no, I'm not attacking you on this. I'm just explaining why it's so, you have to be really aware of it. It's super easy to talk about it and to take that like, I know, that's,
But it's a risk.
I have, like, in my past work, I had a colleague, and we had especially during the diversity month, my colleague was with ADHD, and she was requested to come and give a session and talk about it. And that was the first time she disclosed about her ADHD in public. And she was really happy and contented, and that gave her a feeling of self-acceptance. And it also, helped her talk even with the employer, like what else the employer can do for workplace accommodations. So there are situations like this as well.
It depends. Like it can also be an empowering thing, but it also carries a lot of risks. And
But like, how long had your colleague been at that job? Like, because we talk about what we need. What I need is the job.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a consultant and you're like using like the municipal.
But coming back to, like, there are companies in Finland that are specially mentioning in their job advertisement that they are open to workforce with neurodiversity. So if you, and it's not that, you have to write each and every person. There is a contact in that job advertisement, where you can write to that contact if you need any accommodations during the interview process or during the selection process, then they are happy to accommodate.
That's fine, but if I don't have that job, it makes more sense to try to, like, I'm not hiding it, if I have to answer who is M on a slide, I mention all of the sports and many physical activities I enjoy doing. along with a bunch of like other very random broad hobbies, cooking and baking, crosswords, reading, all of this. I make it clear that I'm a very strong generalist. It is possible to say it without saying it. And in Finland, like with the culture, how it is here, I think it's very important to make clear, like, that we don't, like, there are a lot of things need to be said without saying the actual thing sometimes.
Yes, and this is where the ecosystem is missing, like both ways. So this will enable with time, I think, like in with job seekers and like with employers, we both have to, step forward together. Yeah, yeah.
I agree, but like, as mentioned, like, it's also obviously a risk because like, the employer might not want to make those accommodations. They might just decide that, okay, we don't have the capacity for this. We don't have, people to accommodate
But-
you, and therefore we can't
but
hire you.
And
This is
it's
again-
one thing to write that as policy, but it is not codified into law in Finland in any way. Like
Yes,
if I'm in the US and I apply for a job, and I might have to disclose the disability in the application, but if it comes up in the interview and I even feel a little bit like I was discriminated against for this reason, legal aid, you sue them. I don't really agree with such a litigious culture, but you also don't have that here to have your back just in case.
but
it's really difficult to
yes,
prove.
coming back to your point, if we don't disclose about, our workplace accommodations need, and if that are missing, it's not only about ending up into job, it's about sustaining the job, it's about growth, it's also about retention. So I can end up like a number of jobs, but if I'm not happy there, if the culture is not fit for me, I cannot survive there. So to make the culture fit for you, we have to extend that, information to where we are going. So
That's
Yeah.
also a fair point, and like, that's something a lot of time I say to people when they're like, well, what if I disclose this and then they don't want to hire me? Well, would that have been a company where you want to work? If that's the culture, but at the same time, it's easier said than done, like, especially if you've been long-term unemployed, sometimes you just need a job.
And you don't have to share your ADHD or ASD with anybody. Like, you don't have to. That's also your choice.
But I have been reading a lot about this, and especially people with neurodiversity, because there are statistics like only 25%, believe in disclosing, and mostly they don't prefer disclosing. And that is one of the reason, like they face challenges because there are companies, they lack accommodations. Yeah, and they face challenges when it comes to growth.
And
So the other thing, like where in a recruitment process, it might make sense to disclose that personally, I think is after the trial period, but a lot of times.
Yeah. That's the time.
Like the recruitment process itself here is very difficult. You might have a process that takes 2 to 3 months. You might have 4 to 6 stages of the process. And it's really, really hard to keep the energy up about something that seems just like a nebulous possibility. I think that's the case for a lot of job seekers, but when there's that many steps, if I'm a job seeker and that's what I'm focusing on, I'm probably applying to one job a week. And if I haven't, gotten a decision and it's been ongoing a while, it's a bit frustrating, like to like really, really want the job and continue to give your all, and then to have that disclosure be the reason you might be denied at one of those later stages, which are frustrating times to be denied for any job seeker. I think I would definitely not recommend disclosing until after the trial period.
Yeah, I feel the crux of the disclosure discussion is be very aware of what you say. Because like Yuruchi said, being able to tell what works best for us at the workplace, be able to tell about the accommodations that would allow us to do our best is important if we want to keep a job long term. But the way you disclose, the words that you use, the way you present the difficulties or the traits that you would like to be accommodated, it plays a huge part and can be a detrimental during the recruitment process and even after, during this trial period. What I would like to ask is, in contrast to that, could you tell about a time where you managed to have your neurodivergence work in your favor?
Many times.
Because you already told
Yeah.
about that your ADHD during an interview like makes you very bubbly.
It does, and then also I think that like I am, because my mind is always like this. I might seem very calm and I might even bring calming energy to the room, but I'm always like, you know, I'm focusing on all the things at once. And then I get bored easily. I am also quite multi-talented, and I'm not saying that like because I want to brag. I'm saying it because it's just a fact, and it's always been a bit of a challenge for me to try to decide what I actually want to do, because I can be great at so many things. So then I've been changing jobs a lot, and for either the reason that I didn't really necessarily feel that I belong in the group, and I had like issues with the, you know, my boss or colleague or something, or then I just got bored of doing this. I excelled and I wanted another job. So then I kind of got the label of that you've changed jobs quite frequently. So like it actually was told, like I was said that in an interview that, how do we know if you're going to stay long? And I kind of like started thinking that maybe I should stay longer in jobs because this is what people do, right? But I just never really probably could do that until now anyways. So then I decided that I can create what I want to do. I can do a lot of different things. I can have several jobs. I can be an entrepreneur on the side. I just need to kind of really know myself well, that what are the strengths and what are the kind of environments and roles that will drain me. So then I've been able to select the projects that I like, the people that I like to work with, and I've been able to create like a kind of very ADHD like work life, let's put it that way, that I can deliver what I promise to the customers or my partners, and it's just, you know, definitely working out well for me. But it took a long time, and I always felt like there was something wrong with me, that I wanted to change the environment or role, and so frequently. So, yeah,
I think you, Peter, had similar experiences with like the length of contracts.
Well, yeah, it works for me. It works the best to run my own business. Yeah, I've had jobs on the payroll and for longer periods of time, and it's not necessarily always bad, but for me it works better to come in and solve a problem and then leave,
Yeah.
like that. And I was thinking, the question, you can interpret that in different ways, but I don't make it work for myself. To be honest, I don't consider it working very well for me. But I do think that in general, and that is, I do think that I can bring not necessarily a different viewpoint, because it's often said, right, but presented like that. I actually think that I'm often the more, I would almost say more objective, neutral viewpoint, where and I think that's one of the things that I do think work in my, to my benefit, is that I can really assess things objectively and based on the information that's there, instead of getting really all caught up in an idea. And advocating for an idea, and that works really well in design, because you really need to be able to let go of something really quickly and not, and just move on to the next thing in that sense, where people get really hung up and passionate about their own ideas and things they want to do. But yeah, generally it doesn't really, I don't consider that it works. It works. I've made it work. Is it a huge advantage? No, I don't. So, but
But yeah, probably kind
Yeah.
of the same. The same, pretty
yeah,
much. But yeah,
so I'm new to Finland. If anybody needs some hands or a brain in the design field, let me know. Yeah.
What about you?
I think my field is actually really conducive to somebody with ADHD. Like constantly putting out a bunch of tiny fires, fixing things, having a bunch of things on my plate, is like what's expected of me. And luckily that happens to be something that people with ADHD tend to excel at. The one thing is that some products, if you're going to be marketing them, are a lot more interesting to build than to market. So finding things that are actually like super fascinating to write about, if I have to do the writing part of the marketing, and I usually do, that's why people hire a native English speaker here in Helsinki. I think it's really important that the product is big enough. So for me, things that are usually like very interesting are things that kind of deal with a lot of information or moving parts, industrial things. The other thing, I'm really not motivated to work toward things that just generally go very much against my values. So certain industries, like I grew up in one of the opioid capitals of the US, so I don't want to work for pharma.
yeah.
I've seen what it does to people. Oil and gas, I don't want to work for that. Like I really care about the environment. I don't want to work for like a factory farm or meat production, dairy production, really. Those go against my values, and I might be able to do that work, but it would be so psychically draining to do anything that goes against my values. And as a marketer, I feel like a lot of people think that we don't even have values. So that's kind of a frustrating thing to confront. It's not a secret. Everybody hates marketers. We know it. You know it. It's okay. We can move on from that. But I think, yeah, just kind of usually a marketing role requires a lot of deep focus, but also kind of a lot of bouncing from thing to thing. And that is the thing that is something that I've been able to kind of have as an asset at work. The other thing is, although I do not like small talk, it is a little bit easy to have a short conversation with anybody. I mean, I like to say that I can speak Finnish at the level of like an 8-year-old, and 8-year-olds only talk about their favorite food, but like that's fine because they're very passionate about their favorite food for the most part. So really I can listen to anybody talk about what they're fascinated about and find it interesting.
Yeah.
I've spent a whole Sunday reading Wikipedia about random stuff. It was awesome.
That's really good. I'm afraid we've already spent an hour on this, so it's starting to be time for us to move to the Q&A section of this. Do we have online questions? Did we start with one from there?
Before that, does anybody have questions?
Let's start with one from there, and then we can take one from the
All
other.
right. So this question comes from YouTube, from Shreyas. Thank you, Shreyas. And this is a question to all the panelists. What kind of accommodations would you like as a neurodivergent from your project manager?
So in case people online didn't hear that, so the question was, as a neurodiverse person, what kind of accommodations would you like in the process? So should we start with Peter first?
Yeah. There are a few specific ones that help, but they're very practical, and those are the easy ones. And that has to do with if there are flex desks that I would like to have my own desk, please, 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 please. And somewhere where there's not direct light on me, where it can be cool. I hate it when it's hot and I don't have control over that. All these things, or a desk fan, or very practical. But, and here it comes, and I think it's a good example. I would also like people not to touch my belongings. Now, and that is a really, I'm specifically mentioned that one because that involves other people to change their behavior or to accept that this thing that for most people I would say is quite fine, that for me is so distressing that it can stress me out so much that I really want to leave the building. And nobody understands that, of course, it's fine, but just accept that that's the case. If you grab my phone without asking me, then I lose it, and you will not notice it, but I die inside. So that's just an example. And those are the hardest things ever, and I have not nailed it, and that's why I'm working on that project, that startup, because those are the things that you don't want to repeat because people will question it continuously. Yeah, that's my answer.
Well, like luckily now I'm usually the one running the project, so I would be the project manager, which is great. But I think like what I want to mention that we did not talk about is something called rejection sensitive dysphoria. That please be very careful when you're giving feedback, especially if it's like criticism or like negative feedback, because it can be very, very hurtful to us who suffer from this RSD condition. And this is something that has been the biggest struggle with me, like for me personally. The smallest of thing can feel so overwhelmingly bad that I can't cope with it. And I kind of understand that this is not really a big deal, but emotionally it is really, really big. It's huge. And I probably like, you know, what you said, that if somebody touches your things, like you want to leave the building or
so I leave.
And that's the thing, like in my head, I know that like, okay, like, you know, I should be able to take feedback. Maybe I did something that I could do better, but like the way you give feedback, I think that is just, you know, learn ways to ask, because I know what I've done wrong. If I've done something that is not like, I'm not 100% happy with what I've done, I know it myself, and I don't need anybody to come and tell me that. So, but that's kind of like one very important thing.
Well, I might have a thicker skin, mostly from having lived in Germany. It was really hard at first to get that level of direct critical feedback constantly. So, but coming here to Finland, I think there is a tendency to say nothing if the work is good, and just like, I don't like this if the work is not what you expected or not what you want. And we're not mind readers. Like, I'm not a mind reader. I don't know. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but if I don't know what you didn't like, how can I change it? I want constructive feedback. I want something I can do to make it better.
Yep.
The other thing, I really kind of prefer feedback face to face, but any task in writing, I want to be able to check it off like an actual list. There's another couple of things. I have my like personal laptop, which I use for work right now, but on the back of it, I put this like sticky white paper. I turned it into a whiteboard so I can take notes on it that aren't on paper. But if I'm in a meeting, I can just kind of take the notes on my laptop. And I get it, that's weird, but it's very like useful to have that whiteboard there. I mean, I don't want to waste paper. I mean, I have a notebook graveyard in my house already. So I think that is something that is super helpful. This is just a general thing. I'm not really sure if it's like an ADHD thing, and it's definitely better in Finland than anywhere else I've been, but sometimes there's not a really good reason to touch another person at work. You don't need to put your hand on their shoulder to tell them they're doing a good job while leaning over them or anything like this. I think maybe in other countries this is more of a problem, and it possibly has something to do with being like a younger woman and having an older man manager, which is just uncomfortable when somebody does that type of thing at work. But I personally, I mean, no reason to touch people at work with things, like objects that are mine. If it's messy, it doesn't need to be straightened. That's what I'll say. But if I drop my phone on the floor and you pick it up, as long as we don't knock heads trying to pick it up, that part doesn't bother me so much. Knocking heads is generally annoying though.
I think all of you made like really good points, and all of these are the kind of accommodations that probably help most people.
Yeah.
I can add,
Yeah.
like, from employer's point of view here.
Yeah.
So the hiring managers and the interviewers, they can go through training how to, if they have any neurodiverse candidate and the candidate has disclosed his or her identity, then these kind of trainings can help the hiring managers or interviewers to use correct words and to also overcome the unconscious biasness. So there are trainings available about the disability awareness training. So
Can I make just to clarify what I meant a little bit, maybe that didn't really come out that well, but is that the biggest challenges that I have faced were not so much about me needing something, but more about that others did not understand me well or interpreted things in a certain way. And that worked not in my advantage, I can tell you. So, and that's a bit similar, a bit similar with what I said about not touching my belongings. It requires others to adapt and change their views and how they and I think that's extremely hard because you cannot capture that in a list or so. That's why I mentioned that certain practical things are super easy, but the fact that you do not interact in a way that is expected, that is annoying for others. And how can you solve that problem? Because the world is a social event and work is a social event. And unless you put extremely clear boundaries about the work that's being done and the social aspects of that, which never happens. You get promoted based on, sorry to say, but still if someone likes you or not because of the quality of your work. So it's, yeah, I'm saying, like, I cannot really put it in words. The accommodations, I don't think it will happen, to be honest. It's acceptance, basically. And it sounds maybe a bit, like, oh, acceptance. But yeah, it's accept me for who I am and don't get angry, sad, or whatever, or think that I'm weird, or yeah, how are you going to achieve that?
Yeah, I guess patience and treating everyone like a human being like that reminds me. I have a cousin who's very severely on the spectrum, that like he's never worked a day in his life, and he told me at one point that he likes the fact that like I treat him like a normal human being, whereas like my parents tend to have a very short temper when it comes to anything about him, and like constantly just like, wait, why can't you just do that? Like, why can't you just make a decision? And without understanding that he literally can't.
Why don't you just? It's really one of the massive trigger sentences, and what you just said is super important. The gravitas from jobs. I think you reach. I'm a white middle-aged male, but I have reached a certain level that I will not get. I cannot exceed that level because I do not have the gravitas. And I'm not taken serious. I'm not being like, not out for a pity party, but I'm just not taken seriously at the same level as someone my age that does things differently, dresses differently, and acts differently. And
really quickly, Em, and then we need to
Yeah.
jump on to the next question.
Okay, I saw, recently there was like a therapist who works with neurodivergent people on Instagram. And she was saying that the hardest thing with new clients is like to convince them that they're not wrong, but the environment that they've grown up in and had to interact in throughout their like childhood and work life has kind of, she used the word gaslit them into believing there was something wrong with them. When it's not that there's something wrong with them, it's that, their support system, especially trusted adults as a small child, didn't understand like how to be what they needed as a child. And I feel like to come out and say like I have ADHD at work, well, that's something I still kind of feel like, well, that's something wrong with me. I don't want to tell people that. I will find a way to frame it as something positive and brand myself, because if you can't brand yourself, what else can you brand as a marketer,
Right.
And I think it's telling that, I'm much more comfortable calling myself a marketer than I am calling myself someone with ADHD. I'm not very open about this. Even though I'm on the board, I didn't do much promotion on my own page for this event because I'm saying this here into a screen, into a camera. So sorry, everyone. I know I was supposed to promote. I know you all noticed and didn't say anything.
We're here, that's what matters. Anyone in the room? Questions? There.
A few questions, but basically, I'm interested in the experience of minorities and diversity. If somebody was to, how did you get to this point in life where you are, and what could be a short advice in order to get there? And the second one is that, for example, I deeply empathize with you both, and so what I came up with is that I have an urge, that it's an unnatural urge to make things better. If I see something that could be better, so better to do something else. So how, if that happens to you, how does it deal with things that is not change?
I think know your boundaries, know your limits, and know how to articulate them concisely and say no. I think you have to advocate for yourself a lot. But I think the best thing you can do if you're not having like any trouble with neurodivergence yourself is to be somebody who your friends and colleagues and peers feel they can trust with that information, and then ask them what they need if they're having a hard time. Because when you it's almost like if I don't share what's going on with me, how can my friend stick up for me in a situation when they if they don't have the information they need not to be a bystander, they will be a bystander, So I guess make yourself somebody who people can trust to come to, and then don't be a bystander when you have the opportunity not to be.
I want to clarify, what did you mean with how did we get to this point? Do you mean professionally or with okay. Yeah. Well, I would say if you suspect that you might have any of these conditions, then look for help or go to speak to a professional about it. Read about it online because there is plenty of information, and then look for communities, and there are communities such as Nordic Inclusify, for example. So I think that has helped a lot. When I started my journey, I didn't know anybody who had ADHD, and like so that was very scary. But I think nowadays you can find people online, but like just be mindful about it. Like, who do you talk to? Always kind of like be careful also. If you want to do something about it, be vocal about it, talk about it. If you are employed, make a suggestion at work, like to the board or somebody who can, who has the power. Educate the staff, like make accommodations, kind of make the neurodivergent people feel comfortable about talking about their needs. That's kind of what I would suggest to do. And then you can join also, like, NGOs, be part of the communities and be an ally. Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I think carve out the space. I think what I needed to do to get here is to carve out the space to like know myself, both the good things and the bad things, and be like really kind of radically honest. And therapy. I mean, I went to Catholic school, so I would have needed it either way after the nuns, but it was very helpful to work through that.
Elena, you have it. Yes, so thank you so much for sharing everything. It's I work now in the and for me it's very important information to improve our processes. And my question is related to 2 points actually, because we discussed a little bit about how tough it is to go through the hypothetical situations during the recruitments, and also about timers in the tests. So both of these things are why recruiters use them, and I believe that you all understand. It's to see what are your skills, right? And the thing is why they use both of them to kind of find out what is you actually capable of without using of internet, and especially for timers. So from your perspective, during all the interview processes, what was the most comfortable way for you, how employers tested your skills and abilities? What was the most comfortable way for you to kind of demonstrate the best out yourself, what you can actually do? Peter.
So, yeah, I mentioned that about the hypothetical situation, right? So for me, it is really to talk about just previous experiences. So if you ask me, if you're after examples of something, right? So I have no issues with that in a conversation, and you are clear about what you want me to demonstrate. I am 100% sure I can give some examples of that. So for me, the hypothetical thing is just, it's really role playing, right? So and I have so many, like I said, this was about a situation because it was a management position where someone was being basically didn't live up to the expectations. I hired someone, and what are you going to do? And that went on and on. There was this was an evolving scenario.
Yes.
I need to know so many details. Like I said before, that's just an impossibility. I'm just sitting there, what do you want from me? Like, do you want me to fire them? Is that possible? Is there still probation period? What are you after? I really do not, you know what I mean? So that's when that gets really difficult. But if you ask me about, so that's really rude to say, but I have fired people in my life. Just ask me about it. Like, yeah, hired and fired. And also, that's so I have no issues with that. Just don't make it a fairy tale, then it's a problem. Yeah, so, and like I have done so many tests in my life, I score really well on all those tests. Doesn't matter which one. So yeah, that's not a problem. For me, it's literally it sounds a bit arrogant, but it's even the personality tests I nail. So, yeah.
I just want to add on that, like, I just want to make a comment, like, I felt a bit like, how do I say, like, when you really explain it, we do this so that we know what you're capable of doing. I'm like, I'm not stupid. I know why the tests are made.
Yes,
like, I felt like you're telling, like, that's, I just want to point that out, that, like,
yeah, it was not meant to
kind of offend you. I
Yeah.
just wanted to clarify my point. Like
Yeah.
how I see it and why I'm asking that.
Yeah, I would kind of suggest that when you're recruiting, look at the facts that what actually predicts how the person is going to do in a certain role. Actually, like the personality test would be one big factor that can predict how well a person is going to be do in a certain role. Any kind of like played acting situation, you're actually testing how well the person can act, and if you're not an actor, then kind of like, why would you do that? Like, have a conversation about it. That's my point. But yeah,
like I think those like, you know, act this out, or like, here's a scenario, do it now. Those are really, really difficult. I didn't have this in a recruitment process, but on the like Finnish proficiency test, the UKI, it was like, here, like this, it was the speaking, say your name, you're calling the health center, you have a problem, and I'm like, oh my God, do I have cancer? Do I have a headache?
What to
am I
choose?
pregnant? Yeah, and I spent so much time thinking about my imaginary disease that I have now failed the speaking part of that test twice. But I think something that can really help with those types of tasks is to have like several smaller sections, like write the introduction to a blog post. Don't write the whole blog post. Like have it be a little bit smaller. Like if I only have done ones for marketing. So maybe have 4 sections, come up with a tagline, and then give options for each part of them. So have like, write a blog post, write a new headline for this product, write the title of a press release, and who would be the best like contacts for like publications to launch this product in these like magazines. Like, is it Forbes? Is it Entrepreneur? Like, is it, you know, Mechanics Today? Whatever. Set up the task so it is able to demonstrate a high level of understanding of the role without taking too much time. Because that's another thing. When you have all of these tasks, I did one last week and I spent 18 hours on a task for something that could come out to nothing.
Yeah.
I really wanted the job, but that was a
It's
lot
very
of time.
common also, of course, in design.
And I went to an event about something I knew I wasn't sure I would even understand anything at the event. I just went to the Ravellos.
I was, if you check about Microsoft's neurodiversity hiring program, they had one very good thing in their program was the hiring managers, they got an opportunity to talk to, you know, the job seekers or the applicants who were there. They got time to formally and informally interact with the job seekers. And they also had some skill development training and some experience about how it would be working with Microsoft. So before their actual interview, like face-to-face interview. So these are the small things that Microsoft considered when hiring a neurodiverse candidate, and that was really appreciated by the applicants there. So instead of, you know, having this ticking clocks, it would be great to have such things in the recruitment process as well.
Yeah. Can I say, like, so those where it, so again, it's a little bit what I said before. It's very hard to define what you can improve or what you need, because it's often about the communication, the way of communicating. So like I said, the tests, and that's different for everyone, of course, but I don't need extra time for an online test. And if there's a personality test, I can get you any personality that you want out of it. But the problem is, for example, in my case, I also need to show a portfolio, and then they ask, send me the portfolio. I can physically not send them a portfolio. I can explain why, because I know that they will not understand it in the way that I want them to understand it or whatever. But it's super, you notice that I probably get super nervous even talking about nervous, but the problem is about the different ways of communicating and the different ways of the different things that you expect from it. So again, if I apply for a small contract of a few weeks, I almost, I don't want to say always, but I often get the job. And if I apply for a role that requires me to come into the office every day or 3 days a week and interact with a broader team and be a team lead, then the questions arise. And I think the issue is not necessarily improving the process. It's talking about the expectations and defining the expectations for those roles. And if you are clear about that, maybe it's just an impossibility, right? Maybe if you do not have, it's not necessarily that everyone fits every role. And maybe the fact that you are autistic and that you interact in a certain way means that you can just simply not have that role within that company. And I don't think anybody ever wants to say it like that, but it's like, yeah, sometimes you don't have the skills, right? Maybe that's it. And even though you have the hard skills, you miss certain soft skills. And maybe that sounds really negative, but maybe that is just a fact then at some point. And if you're more honest about that, maybe that helps as well, right? Okay, sorry, I'm not sure if I made it clear.
I think that was really good, and I saw you had your hand up, but I'm afraid that we are out of
That's okay.
time.
Sorry.
But thank you, all four of you, for coming here today and sharing your thoughts. It has been a really interesting discussion, for at least from my perspective. I hope for all of you as well, and I hope that people online have been able to hear well enough. And happy to have you join. And those of you who are here a week still have some time if you want to network and get some more cola. But for now, thanks everyone, and the recording of this will be available online for anyone who came in later on and wasn't able to watch from the beginning, for example. But please follow us on our social media channels. Send connection requests to me and myself at least. I'm assuming that most of you are also open to networking on LinkedIn. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.